Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how you doing? You got a chuckle and a laugh for us today.
Oh, Mr. Robert, Mr. Robert. Apparently that was his first time hearing our theme music. And so he's talking about y'all trying to cross over. So, nonetheless.
Oh,
Hello,
wow.
sister.
Hello, we got Shireen Smith tuning in. Hola, sister. Hola, hola. We got Cam tuning in. Hey, Cam, how you doing? We're so excited about tonight's episode. So wherever you are, we want you to first like, follow, share, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to Hey Sister on all your social media platforms, as well as follow, subscribe, and share with a friend. We also want you to get involved in the comments tonight because that's where the action happens. It goes down in the comments, and we want you to be involved in the comments tonight. We have someone else tuning in. Hey, Miss Kizzy, how you doing? Hey, hey, hey. So we're excited this evening. Our show's going to be a little different this evening. Y'all know typically we start off with hot topics, but because our guest is who he is, we're going to talk about all the topics. We're going to have a wide ranging conversation and get his perspective. And so we would like to welcome the Black Aristocat, as he's known on the interwebs, Mr. Kamara Williams.
How you doing? How you doing? Am I coming through clearly?
You are
good?
coming through loud and clear. And as you know, he is an attorney here in the Orlando area. He's also a husband. He's very engaged in politics. He's a father of 2 young daughters. So he has a lot of interesting things that make up who he is. But tell us a little bit more in your own words who you are and why you're the Black Aristocat.
Okay. Well, I'm Carl Williams, and I mean, you've done a splendid job already. Like I said, I practice in Central Florida. I have my own practice, Smith and Williams Trial Group, of my partner Divine Smith. We do cover a multitude of different areas, but my primary area is probate and estate planning. And probate litigation is, of course, when someone passes away and your estate has to go through the court system. It's just a fancy way to say court for death. But it's probate. And estate planning, obviously, is planning out your assets and things of that nature. Of course, we handle all sorts of civil litigation, and I have a number of different cases that handle that, as well as employment law. So one caveat I will tell people: when you're trying to contact an employment attorney, such as myself, or you're thinking about protecting your interests, always write down or journal your thoughts for your job, and blind carbon copy yourself and your personal email address, because when they kick you out of a system, you won't have access to those things. So that's a little tips I would tell you for an employment issue. I know that's not what you asked me. I also have a podcast and a running blog. My blog is kamarawilliams.com, and you can find my podcast on there. My podcast is also on Spotify and Apple, and the podcast is called Uncultured Biased. If you ask me why is my name the Black Aristocat, let's see. I have this whole elongated statement about why that is. The best way I could say it is that if you look at the term aristocrat, it's someone like it's deemed a blue blood and a member of like the societal aristocracy and the social class that, according to Western civilization, is considered the top of the heap. Well, and then obviously somebody with a high social yield and somebody who considers themselves just elite. Oftentimes, it's relatable as far as Black culture is concerned. For me, I look at it like an aristocrat is somebody that's a little bit different. It's somebody that can operate in 2 different worlds, both in high society as well as still keep their their cultural sense. And I feel like that's the dichotomy of the Black person. The Black person, especially a professional Black person, we can operate in 2 different worlds. We have to have one foot in our community and one foot in the, aristocracy of, you know, conventional America. And so that is kind of why I said I'm the Black Aristocat, because we're all literally everybody on this is an Aristocat. I just, said just it created that moniker. But anybody who's operated in two different worlds is a Black Aristocat. And my podcast is called Uncultured Bias, and that's really just a play on the words, because oftentimes when you think about culture and look through the prism of that, it's they look at it as anti-Black, and unless they give us the thumbs up, like, oh, okay, this is fine, now it's cool. But if it's not given the thumbs up culturally, then it's not considered classy. And so, what I wanted to do is kind of flip that and look at culture through the consumption and prism of Black people, and kind of play on it like, it's coming from the other side of it. And yeah, it hasn't been given a stamp of approval, but it's still uncultured and still biased and it's still Black. And so I hope that explains it.
Yeah, I think that does explain it very well. And so you talked a lot about in there really splitting difference, for lack of a better term, how we have to kind of have both feet in both worlds, how when we are not deemed proper or appropriate, right, uncultured, uncivilized, all of those things, but we're none of those things at the same time, like, because all that we are is great magic. Like, I don't know, that's my take on it. I don't know, sister, if you had another way of your view on that or explaining that, but that,
it's kind of thumbing its nose at what, although
exactly, like, stop putting us in them boxes and those labels, like, none of that even matters. It don't even fit, right?
Right. And that's kind of where it's at. Like, I thought of the idea for the name of the pod because I was like, unless somebody gives us the thumbs up, it's not considered mainstream or anything like that. And so I was like, all right, so, anything that's Black, unless it's, given a cosign, it's not considered above board. And so I was like, all right, so my statements are not deemed to be conventional. They're not deemed to be, because they're not green lighted by just call it what it, white supremacy. So I always try to look at it from a different perspective. But anyway, I don't want to take up time on that. Yeah, if you guys want more information, go to KamaraWilliams.com and check it out. That's why I have an active blog and all that.
Yeah, well, we put the blog up there so you all can the website, so you can go, you can take a look, and you can get into that. So we like I said, tonight we're gonna be a little different. We're gonna hit a lot of different topics. We're gonna go kind of around the world in the day with some of these topics, and we're gonna be a little bit all over the place. I know a lot of things you talk about in your blog and on some of just even your social media posts. It's related to pop culture. So we're going to hit on some pop culture things. We're also going to hit on some social justice issues, because you address a lot of those issues as well. And so we're just going to hit on a lot of things, but we're going to start off with one. This is all in, I don't know if this pop culture, what culture, whatever, I don't know. Did any of y'all go to the funeral? I didn't go to the funeral this weekend. I didn't. I just saw one image of Queen Elizabeth alone, sitting in a pew alone. And I guess because they had strict social distancing practices. And for me, that just struck me to see, a widow having been married 73 years. But knowing what her position is and knowing how she always has to hold things up, even though she might not be held up inside, it was just very stark to just see a 94-year-old woman who just lost her husband of 73 years to be sitting alone. That's one thing that just struck me. I don't know. Did either of you go to the funeral, and any takes on Prince Philip and how he really planned out? You're in estate planning. He planned out how he wanted his services to go. He wanted to be in a Range Rover. He didn't want the carriage, right? So either of you want to chime in on your take on Prince Philip's final homegoing?
I didn't see. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yes, I did not go to the funeral. I saw some of the various talking heads discussing it over the weekend and on Friday, and you know, of course, they were talking about the fashion and different things that were going to come of it. I think the point that you made, I did not see that picture of Queen Elizabeth, but I think that's the major point, right? When you spent more time with someone in your life than you have without them, how does that play out, for you? And as someone who, again, society forces to always have a certain look and a certain face and talk about, being quote unquote proper. That's a challenged place to be in when you just can't simply express grief, again, as 94 years old and you've been with somebody for 73 years. So, but no, I did not attend the funeral. Sorry.
All right. What about you?
No, I didn't. But I would say this about the royal family: they are from a bygone era of imperialism that most people now, when you look at things through the prism of just 2021. Uh, their appeal. I wonder is it still effective? And especially, yeah, I know Meghan Markle is no longer part of the royal family, but that was for at least for Black Americans. I think a majority of them was their interest in that family. And when she's no longer a part of that, I think the interest of them seeing somebody who's actually was not well regarded uh, through Black British circles, right? You look at the way their commentary, especially when he died, and it wasn't exactly, singing hosannas about how great of a human being he was. Now I know the PR statements had him as this and that and the third, and served in World War II, and very honorable status. But when you talk to people or you listen to people who reside in that particular area or United Kingdom, and they were Black, they're not sitting there talking as beautifully as one would think. In fact, they spoke more about a DMX passing, an American artist, spoke more fondly about that than Prince Philip passing away, which I think that speaks to something, right?
Yeah, I definitely think it does speak to some. We got some folks say, I saw a very small clip. That's it. No, I had errands to run, didn't make it to the funeral. Oh, again, I forgot he passed. So that is some of the comments there.
I am not laughing at the fact that he passed. I am just laughing at the comments.
Yeah, well, again, he lived a long storied life, as they say, and there's a whole lot of history related to him, his family, being in exile, a monarchy in exile. He was 99. So when you speak of a bygone era, I mean, really, that is a nearly a century ago that he came on this earth. So it's definitely a bygone era. So another passing here in the hip hop world over the weekend, Black Rob passed away as well. I know you wrote in detail about the passing of DMX, and so one of the connections here, Black Rob had just posted. He was also in his own very ill state when he was made one of his last public posts, commenting on the transition of DMX. What did you think about when you heard this news?
I would say for Black Rob, his story is a little bit interesting, and that I think it's a great example of Black people, what happens when they're not given the proper time or resources when they're in and out of the system. So let me just give you a brief explanation of that. It's easy to look at like Black Rob's musical situation and say that, all right, he was somebody that was a former artist for Bad Boy, and and he died on the bed with no money and whatnot. But in reality, when you peel back behind that, is Black Rob was somebody that was in and out of the system for a large part of his life. I mean, majority of his life, he even has stated that he's been incarcerated more times in his life than been out And so when in fact he did have that big music moment when he had a hit single, he really, and he tells this, he said, I didn't really have the understanding of how to deal with that because I had been so indoctrinated and incarcerated that then I had a hit single, and it was like I went from not having any resources and nobody ever but nobody ever helping me to like a complete 180, having access to everything and anything. And he said I wasn't really ready for that, especially when I had just gotten out of being incarcerated. And so I look at something like that and I think about rehabilitation and in our mass incarceration, and especially for our black men and women, that a lot of times that they're not prepared for life. They're not prepared for success. I mean, we're not prepared for life. If you and I were given, 7 or 8 figures amount overnight, it'd be hard for us to process what to do with that, let alone somebody that has been conditioned within the American judicial system. So it's a tragedy because it's a tragedy for yes to death, but also it's a tragedy his life, what it represents just for the American prison system, industrial prison complex. And that's kind of what I look at it like that. And at the time, he was not an artist of Bad Boy. I think he was an artist for Duck Down Records. And one of the things I'll say, I'm not capping for P. Diddy because I have my own opinions about him and what he represents. But it's unfortunate that a lot of artists, especially Black artists, hip hop artists, do not seemingly they don't have retirement plans. You always hear people say this: there's no retirement plan for hip hop artists. It is what it is. And he had a hit record 20 plus years, almost 20 years ago, and that was it. But again, he's been in and out of prison since that time. So, I mean, that's my opinion on that. Rest in peace. I hope he's in a better place. One would hope. But again, it's a tragedy on a number of different levels.
Yeah. Well, sister, I know you and I, we've talked about this before, and especially as it relates to some of the artists who we grew up with from Louisiana and their family situation. It reminds me, as you talked about the just in and out of the incarceration, remind me of our conversation we had about C Murder and Master P and that, and just even recently, I guess. Unsung has Mystical featured on Unsung, and there's some people have some real strong feelings about that. But really, anybody that's in that industry, is there a retirement plan?
No, actually, it's funny you say Master P. Master P actually brings that up. He says there's no, it's unfortunate, but there's no retirement plan. He actually wants to.
I mean, not just hip hop. I mean, rock and roll artists. I mean, we could go through that whole music industry and what we have seen and observed and witnessed for many, many decades now, what it does. And then when we add on what it does specifically to Black artists, I mean, it's been a life suck in many situations.
Yeah.
Well, first, I would say, yes, RIP to Black Rob. And, I guess my challenge in the situation with Kamara providing the additional background is, I know you said he may not have been under Diddy when Woe came out, but, I am challenged with people like Diddy because and the Barry Gardys of the world, because we know the challenges that we face. We know that our challenges in all industries, but we're specifically speaking of the music industry, is different. So I often wonder, why do these gentlemen who, rise to this level of, I mean, not just gentlemen, I guess, one could argue the point about Pebbles and how she treated TLC. Why do we, when we rise to this certain point, why are we continuing to perpetuate that cycle of oppression and perpetuating the cycle of, just leeching off of people in a way that's just, I don't understand that part, because to your point, they're rock stars, hip hop artists, what have you. They don't have retirement plans. But why? Because this music industry has been messing over music artists forever, for a very long time. And so in doing so, by now it seems that we should be doing things differently. And again, we know that the larger system isn't going to do it. So why do we continue to do that same stuff? Why do we do that to each other? That's the problem that I have.
Yeah, it's a fair statement because you know, you know, with Huff knowing where his artists come from, you would think that it would be some more consciousness in trying to set them up. But at the end of the day, Puff or P Diddy's a capitalist, and you can't really expect capitalists to not be exploitative in one fashion or the other. And even you mentioned Pebbles. I mean, again, that's someone who's a capitalist. They're not in the business. They're in the music, but they're in the business. And sometimes people forget those things. It's the music business, not just music. Not the music industry. It's the music business. And so they're in the business of making money off the music. And so they're not going to create, contracts that are going to take away from their bottom line. Like, I mean, there's something to be said of that. Most of Diddy's former artists are either dead or broke, and
Right.
he's thriving and surviving and doing. Not
And selling liquor. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's well, okay, this is my challenge. And I see Tita in the comments, Demetria and I, we are in this, we do this Sunday school every Sunday, obviously. And and part of the conversation that we have here is about, what is our responsibility if you profess to be a Christian, for example, what is your responsibility versus the responsibility of others? How much are you supposed to be accountable? In the words of New Jack City, am I my brother's keeper? And if the answer is yes, then why do we perpetuate that? I understand being a capitalist, but I also believe, and again, I could be just being naive here, but typically those who are the most successful are those who are not trying to hurt, harm, and take from other people. They give back. They do some. I mean, we know with laws and things like that, there's always. I mean, people play the tax game and do all of those things, but to deliberately set up a contract in a way that is going to create grave danger to people or harm them in the long run. I don't know, that for me, and again, I could be being very naive, but I just find that you usually do better when you're not one of those people that's trying to exploit other folks.
Well, I mean, the contract is pretty much a standard industry contract, right? He's not making one that's specialized for him. And so most of the contracts, especially your first contract in music, is going to be heavily favored towards the record company. And as somebody who does contract law, I can tell you that if my client came to me, I'm not going to make a contract I'm not heavily in favor of my client. They're going to make it in favor of. You're not going to try to make it equal. You're going to make it heavily in favor of your client, and it's up to the opposing counsel, lack of a better term, to create a more unifying, equal contract. And a lot of times, these artists don't have access to counsel to give them that proper guidance. And so, yes, they're going to sign the first thing that is in front of them that is exploitative in a large number of counts, and then it's not until they have some more burn under the industry and they see, okay, that's not the best way for me to operate. They're usually their second or third deals are a lot better, but sometimes people don't make it past their first contract or their first deal because how hard is it to have musical relevancy outside of a hit single? It's very, very hard. So that's really where it's at with that.
Yeah, we got a few comments here. One says it's the same reason that a small amount of former slaves owned other slaves. Money. It's all the same. Another comment here said they should be directed to financial counseling, financial literacy. Most people now do not have retirement plans. Yeah, regardless of industry, right?
Right.
And the folks, artists, are naive, so they don't know they should probably have someone else review. That's just they just excited to get produced. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say this, right? So I'm gonna turn this back onto the people who are listening and commenting. Number one, how many of them have signed a contract without looking at it? And I guarantee you, all of you guys have.
Oh, we have when we got our cell phones.
Cell phones all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Happy to get something. And so that's a natural human thing, right? I can tell you like how many times people have signed employment contracts and then they come to me 3 years later. Oh, I'm you know, I'm getting fired and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, let me see your employment contract. Yeah, I have a contract right here. And then they send it to me and it's not a contract. It's a offer letter. And then it's very one-dimensional. And I'm like, well, who told you to sign this? I just signed it because I was so happy to get the job, right? I was so happy to get the job. I didn't take something that I'm signing that I'm literally, it's my legal signature that could be used against me to an attorney. Like, what do you get from this? And so, yes, it's very easy to go at the artist and say, oh, they, you know, why didn't they do that, or so forth and so on. I know you guys are not blaming them, but I want you guys to use the human function of the way people think about things. And even to the point of retirement, I can guarantee you a large section of the people who are listening to don't have an estate plan. They don't have it. They don't have it. Their retirement. All they know about their retirement is their 401k and blah, 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 but they're not. They haven't really sat down and try to figure out what their next 20, 30 years going to look like. And so, and these are. I'm assuming a majority of these people in here are not in their early 20s or 19 or 18 or 17. You know, there are people who are matured through life, and still they don't think about things for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So how can you expect somebody who's a 18, 19, 20 plus year old artist with no formal education generally, or no really financial background, to make the same conscious thoughts? And then someone on Diddy's end, right, who's going to look at these artists and be like, well, why do I have to create something for you? You know, because that's not my job. My job is to get you a contract and for me to make money off you. My job is not to necessarily, you know, set you up for the rest of your life. That's your job. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. And that's what happens when we operate in a capitalistic society, that, you know, it's exploitative in the very function of how we consume things and interpret things. I know I just went off on a tangent, but I'm sorry.
We take tangents over here. That's all right. Well, you all are tuned in live to Hey Sister. We thank you for getting involved in the comments. We want you to keep getting involved in the comments. And we're going to switch topics. We're going to go to a whole nother place here, because like I said, we're going to bounce all over the world. I could drill into this music industry a little bit more, but I'm going to save that for another day. Because, you know, here we go again. Mass shootings are back. You know, one of the benefits of the pandemic's shutdown and the quarantine was people was in their house, and we had fewer of these incidents. Now, they still were happening. They were not the primary focus on the news. But we have had as many mass shootings as we've had days in this calendar year already, even with one this morning in Austin, Texas. I don't know, sister, I'm going to toss it to you first. You know, the Isaac brothers said it. Here we go again. And it ain't the same kind of here we go again, but it's round and round, back and forth. Here we go.
Yeah, I think, you know, to put it just bluntly, I said this a long time ago, and I continue to say it. After Sandy Hook, we did absolutely nothing. And if those who are largely in power and have the ability to change laws, make laws, and what have you, if they saw mostly white kindergartners get killed and nothing happened, the rest of us don't stand a chance. I don't see a whole lot changing. And and listen, I don't know. I understand the NRA is powerful, but my gosh, I'm like, damn. Because again, we're talking about, from our perspective, very often we're talking about changes to policing in America, and we're talking about police reform. But like I said, if you see little white kids in Connecticut get killed and there are no changes to our gun laws, then I don't have a whole lot of hope for changes to police reform or other things like that. And that's unfortunate. And I hate that when we hear about these things, um we're almost becoming sensitized to them. I mean, as a Black person, I think we often are just like, Lord, please don't let it be a Black person. And then, after that, I mean, I don't know. It just feels very repetitive, like you said, but I don't see any major changes happening. And I don't honestly don't know why. I don't know what our, I think, Kamar, you had something about fear on your page, and you talked about fear, and it is hard for me to comprehend this irrational fear that people have, um, because just historically, the things that they are afraid of have not played out. So I don't understand why we have such fear and we have to go buy so many guns to keep ourselves protected from this boogeyman that never has manifested itself. So, yeah, I don't know.
So the conversation surrounding shootings, right? And the statement you've made is, listen, once we've kind of shrugged off mass shootings within the elementary school and nobody did anything, I think all bets are off at this point. I honestly, I think people are. It's going to take something a lot more visceral than just shooting elementary school. It's weird.
Wow.
I mean, can we pause right there? I mean, yeah, alone is like,
you said something more visceral, and so I'm thinking about, in my lifetime, granted, that is a shooting, but even we've had the World Trade Center.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say it's going to take something to the effect of that strikes at white consciousness, that makes them say, "Wait, whoa, that's not a
like."
I mean, having the babies killed didn't strike at that
that's not it. That's not. And I'm gonna say, okay,
Oklahoma City.
No, this is where I'm telling the insidious nature of like how white people think of things. Like think about.
We over here like struggling. We're like, oh Lord.
I'm telling you, like seriously, think about politically and education, right? They've created a moniker of education the last 20, 30 years that is, this liberal thing, and the idea of education, even if no matter what age, it's not considered. It's really not really considered an ideology that half the country believes. It should be everybody believes in proper education, right? But certain people believe in like, oh well, if you don't come from a certain environment, so we kind of bastardize the idea of education. So that's kind of the thing, right? So it's like, if you can bastardize or you can limit the idea of education in this country, that you don't think everybody should get fair education, or you don't think that equality in education should be a mandate, then you've already in your mind, you've already taken education as a topic that is not something that is sacred. And then you take it with the fact of children in that, and in guns, you're like, oh, okay, well, I've already bastardized the idea of education. And yes, it's terrible that kids get shot, but it's not a holy grail. Let me tell you what's going to be the holy grail.
Please.
The holy grail in white America is going to be, and I don't even like to, because my wife and I talk about this. We don't like to speak things into existence, but it's going to have to be something involved with the government or the military. And those are the two things. like Americana, real Americana things where people are going to be like, okay, we need to change. Like something that's going to change the way that like they're going to look at it, and that's really the ultimate going to be the ultimate statement where people are going to be like, okay, enough's enough, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like it's going to have to be something that's going to tear into the fabric of Americana, not education, because education and yes, babies are important.
But you say not, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you say not education. You said something related to the military, but haven't we seen proof where the military really isn't? I mean, people talk to how patriotic they are, how much they care for our veterans, how much they care about our military, but haven't we seen proof that that too isn't?
No, like, you know what happened with 9/11? It was the buildings, but it was also the fact that they tried to slam into the Pentagon and they were aiming for the White House. Like it was something where they were aiming at the fabric of Americana, and it was like an insult, right? So when I think it's going to have to happen is it's going to have to be something that's going to rock the core of people on one particular side of the issue. They'd be like, yeah, okay, that's enough's enough. Like,
but wait, hold on now listen. Now they carried their behinds down there with guns and bear spray and zip ties and a noose to hang Mike Pence. That didn't tear at their fabric. Right. I mean, come on now.
No, because they felt like the election was stolen.
Oh Jesus!
So that's again, they can compartmentalize things. That's exactly what I'm talking about. They can compartmentalize the idea. It has to be something that is hard for them to compartmentalize. In that they can't compartmentalize Americana. Like it's hard for them to do that. Like when you tear into the fabric of that, it forces them to like, wait a minute, all right, this is not cool. When honestly, I know this is probably something we're going to address later on.
Keep going
with the George Floyd thing, right? And I know this, like, what am I getting with this? But one of the things I found interesting about George Floyd and why everybody reacted the way they did across social boundaries, because they put them in a box to where they couldn't explain it away. It was right there for 8 minutes. Now they say it was 9 minutes and 30 seconds, really, right? So they put them in a box to where you couldn't look away and be like, oh well,
But they are explaining it away. Now it's the drugs in the system. Now it's the exhaust from
that's the defense attorney trying to create reasonable doubt. I'm talking about the reaction across the board for the majority of people when they saw it. They were like, you can't explain it away. And that's what it's going to have to take, something so egregious in nature that is so blatant that it's going to be hard for them to explain it away to where they're like, okay, I have to acquiesce. This is nonsense. And I don't know.
We got some comments here that I got to show up on the screen because see, one of them is where I was going to. Thank you for dropping that in there, Robert Payne. I'm gonna get to yours in a second, but I thought the concert in Vegas would do something that was intense. Agree. I think it's going to be in the military. We talked about the riot. Denise said, when is enough for these people? And why do we keep catering to the crazy? But Rob put the point out there. They had a mass shooting at Fort Hood in 2009. They had a mass shooting.
Apparently that ain't a high enough number.
But in Pensacola, just last year in Pensacola, they had a threat there. I mean,
that's not going to be. I'm sorry.
Kiana said, when every black household buy guns and ammo the same way they do, things will change.
I'm telling you what's going to happen, right? So it's. I'm glad somebody said black folks and ammo. In 1968 in California, they changed the gun laws because the Black Panthers went to the Capitol and they were just normal Americans having guns, right?
Walking around with their guns.
Right, open. And so they changed it. It's as sad as it's going to say, it's going to probably have to take black people shooting up the Capitol or something crazy to where white people be like, whoa, we can't have that. Like they are like, it's going to be something to where it really, and I'm not black. That's not in us. That's not what we do. Right. But that's really what it's going to take for white people to be like, we can't have this. We got to change these gun laws because they're getting way too crazy with it.
But the gun laws would only change for us again.
Laws will only change when they feel like they're being attacked, and white people don't feel like they're attacked right now because the gunman looks like them. When they feel like they're attacked by something that doesn't look like them, it's something foreign, This is why 9/11 bothered them, because it attacked on home soil. It didn't look like these people. Like terrorism, terrorism doesn't shake people, doesn't shake white people. That doesn't, but terrorism shakes them to the core when it feels like it's coming on their front porch and it could be attacked. And therefore, it's going to take something to where somebody looks like me running up in, the Capitol and shooting somebody, and it's
But
going to.
because the other day the young man just drove up there and killed the police officer, and he was black, and they kept going on with their day.
That's not. I'm talking about mass. Like it's going to be something. It has
got to be a lot of bloodshed. That's how we respond to in this country.
That's all we're gonna. That's how we respond. We respond to.
I ain't gonna say we. I ain't owning none of that. That's how they respond. I got some.
But I think it'll segue into what we were talking about Miss Greenfield Thomas, because that comment that she made. I mean, apparently, having blood on your hands is what it takes, or having a whole lot of blood on your hands, should I say?
Oh, the egregiousness would have to be loss of money. Nothing else seems to matter. The attack would then be on blacks, not on guns. That's what he is saying. We got a comment here. We voted in Georgia. Laws changed. No water. When we move just like that, okay, let's see. Yes, we need to hit them in the pocket. Coordinated event to affect their bottom line. Hardcore. Yeah, because honey, they nearly lost their mind with GameStop. That might be the move. The manufactured war on terror generates more money. And you have to remember the DC sniper shooting in 2002. That pretty much shut down DC and Virginia. Yeah. And then when we found out he was black, we was like, oh.
But again, that shut down, it was a shock to the conscience, right? Because so I'm telling you it, but I do agree. It's gonna have to require something to where, okay, if it's not the military, something financial, but something that is going to shake their conscience. And I want to put this out there because I know this.
We're not advocating for this.
I am not advocating for this. Not at all. I am a pacifist in every single function of the word. All right. I'm a pacifist that owns guns, but I'm a pacifist nonetheless. Right. And I abhor violence. I don't believe in death. I don't even believe in the death penalty. And so, but I just think the way white supremacy works, and people are so sick, and they can compartmentalize hate and anger and anything, bigotry, whatnot. They can remove themselves from a situation, but it has to be something that's so egregious and so upfront in their face that they can't move away from it. And that's kind of what I think is going to have to happen.
Yeah. Ooh, that was deep right there. Y'all took me there. But see, really what it is. Oh, anyway, you talked about the boogeyman. All that is projection, but that's a whole nother thing, because the person who they're really afraid of is themselves. Okay, let me go on to the next topic. Woo-hoo. So since you brought her up, Marjorie and them with this America First Caucus. Marjorie. Listen, the people outside in the Rome, Georgia area, they voted for this. They believe in this. They co-sign and condone this all the way. So I'm not surprised, because I've had to go to Rome, Georgia a time or two when I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, and I had a rep up there. So none of this surprises me in the least. But they said they were going to have this America First Caucus, but then now they're already backpedaling, because once their document got out there with their ideas, even fellow Republicans had to say, no.
You're too loud. That's really what it was.
That's what they said. You're too loud. That's it right there.
In the quiet part out loud, and we don't like that. Really, first of all, anybody who's been to Georgia, and I'm sure outside of like 2 cities, right, in Georgia is redneck. Like outside of like 2 cities, right, Atlanta, and I would even say Savannah, and even Savannah or Augusta. Augusta's pretty black, but even that kind of,
not so much. It's more like the plantation is kind of black, like it has that history. It ain't
right, but. Georgia is so red. So when you see somebody like majority.
I mean, you mean like South? You mean like North? I mean, like Florida, where we are?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Florida outside of like 6 cities, Florida is pretty, it's pretty redneck. And so somebody like Marjorie, when she comes out of Georgia, it doesn't surprise me because she pretty much represents the state in its entirety. What really pissed off people about Georgia is that, obviously since Jimmy Carter, that state has gone, ever since after Jimmy Carter, that state had went red, and then Biden pulled the wool over our eyes. But anybody who was working in politics for the last year or so can see actually 2 years, could see what was getting ready to happen. And I actually would tell people, I prognosticate, I said, Democrats are going to lose Florida and they're going to win Georgia. And people looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, what has happened in that state, the demographics have changed in such a place that one city or one populace is going to carry that state. Because, and again, in Georgia, everything is so sparsed out, right? And it's not a concentrated voting base there. And so that's what really shook. Again, we talked about this, right? What's going to have to change when white people make a change in something legislation is because it shocks their conscience. Georgia shocked their conscience to the point where they put out, to this count, 237 across the country voting laws, voting protection laws, quote unquote, because they were like, we can't have that happen, right? That we can't be having people, come and steal election from us, because they saw that when black people,
because they showed up, because we showed up, that's how we stole it, because we showed up.
And so again, that goes into the subconscious. Like when you shock their conscience about something, that's what makes them get all freaked out and they start fumbling and stumbling. We got to do something. But as far as the America First Caucus, that was something where, again, I said she said the quiet part out loud, and then a lot of Republicans like, whoa, I know we might have said that privately, but you can't be putting that on paper. That's not what we are about. Like, we can't be alienating people because they already suffer from an image of being a backwards party. And Republicans like to operate in a sense where they like to toe the line of white supremacy, but then they don't want to go over that line, and then it could be said about Democrats as well. Democrats, they don't like to, some Democrats like to parrot, equality, but their actions, don't match their actions don't match the words. But that's another topic for another day. But for Marjorie, what she did is she said something that she shouldn't put on paper, and people are like, we can't be having that. Take that down. That's not the way we operate.
And it wasn't just Marjorie. She was one of the ringleaders. She had a couple other co-signers on there. Niecy said the country is pretty redneck. That's how we ended up with Trump. So, yeah. Felicia said it was Georgia's season. They shocked the nation, and I'm glad this weapon will not prosper. Well,
and I actually agree with Felicia. If we stay on top of our game, and when I say we, I am not talking about a particular party or anything like that. But I'm just saying, we're talking about Black folks. If we stay on top of our game and continue to mobilize and galvanize, we will continue to shock their system, because just like it happened in Georgia, it happened here in Arizona. We only 5% of the population. So, but it was not just, of course, just Black people who had to show and prove, had to not just talk about it, but be about it. But yeah, if you continue to do that, I mean, this is what they're forcing us to do, right? You're going to continue to come up with the most ridiculous laws possible. And so we're going to have to stay on top of our game. We're going to have to show up early to vote. We're going to have to be prepared to stand in lines and not be
no ways tied.
Right. We're going to have to go pick up our family members, friends who don't have transportation or who live way out far from their polling place. We're going to have to do everything.
And bring your purse with your snacks. Go ahead and have your water, have your little cooler, your little bag right there.
Right. Have a few little snacks packed. But yeah, we're definitely going to have to do those things. I think I don't actually, I mean, I think Marjorie, she gets on my nerves, right? Okay, she gets on my nerves. But I mean, most white supremacists get on my nerves, right? But what I will say is, I mean, at least you're open with it. I can deal with you being open. I mean, I've been saying this like even at work. I'm like, I can deal with people who just like, I don't mess with you because I did grow up in the South, right? And we understand. I understand you, you understand me. Cool. Like, don't try to shoot me for just being black. But if you just don't like me and you want to use the N word,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, exactly, do your thing, what have you. Where what's more egregious to me is now you're saying how they're like, whoa, Nelly, now you're telling the secrets. Don't do that. And it's like, those are the people that I have problems with.
Well, let me give you even another case. So John Boehner is on his book tour right now. So John Boehner is on his book tour, and he's had all these things to say that, you know, he's free now, so he wants to say all these things. But again, when they asked him who he voted for, he still voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
Right.
Because of policies. No, that ain't no policies, dude. Stop deluding yourself. It's white supremacy.
Yeah, it's racism, it's hate.
He said that what's his name? Ted Cruz was Lucifer in the flesh. But you still support the folk? Like, come on, man. Stop it.
That just goes to show you that how far white supremacy will go to protect. It's protectionism in its very sense, right? So they will vote for something even though they know it's wicked and it doesn't make any sense. But because, you know, it's embedded within how they see the system in the world, they'll be like, I'm going to vote for it because, yeah, I know it's bad, but at the same time, I know my duty is to protect it. And that's how, you know, when he said that statement, like, oh, I voted for Trump, even though I know it's terrible. Like, it's terrible, right? But that goes into humanism. I mean, think about how in our own lives and families, we know somebody's terrible, but we protect their secrets. And like, why do we do that? Oh, because, you know, it's, you know, Uncle so-and-so is crazy, you know, but he's like, no, he's actually a molester. You know what I mean? But no, but we protect. It's the human ideal of protecting is not unique within white supremacy. But in this political lens, how they're looking at how he looks at the world, yeah, it makes sense because he knew Trump was dangerous, but at the same time, he was like, but I know my duty, and my duty is to cast a vote for him. You know, and kudos to him for being honest about it, right? Because he can be like, oh, I didn't vote in that election. When a lot of people said that they didn't. I know a couple people.
I wrote in Abraham Lincoln and
yeah, I didn't vote or whatnot. And I'm like,
he voted for John McCain, even though he's dead.
Right. And so I kudos to him for being upfront about it, but also, again, he just said the quiet part out loud. I already knew. Like, he wouldn't have to tell me that you voted for Trump for me to be like, yeah, you voted for Trump. I know.
Right.
I could tell the way you move that you voted for Trump, right? And so John Boehner is an interesting case because, again, like you mentioned, he was the, you know, was a congressional leader, party leader, and he didn't have a lot to say when he was the party leader. Actually, the party fell apart under him because he allowed the, you know, the separate nature of the Tea Party crop up and whatnot, and now it became this loud, booming voice in the party. They're no longer called the Tea Party; it's called the majority voice now. So, but you know, he mentioned something about. I know he made a comment yesterday or today about gun violence, and I'm like, well, dude, like Sandy Hook was actually under your watch. Like, you could have brought forth legislation. And in your point, you said something to the point where I was waiting for the Senate to pass a bill, and then I would have taken something from the congressional side. But I'm like, so your idea of leadership was waiting for the other branch of the legislative body to make something, so then you can create an idea. That's what you're writing on. That's the horse you're going to ride on in regards to this. And again, it's oddly unique that he wants to go ahead and stick his beak in gun violence, but acting like he didn't have an authority in how to actually do something about it.
Right. As Speaker of the House for 5 years. Yeah.
Right. And so I parrot that by saying he wants to talk about how crazy Trump is. He wants to talk about how crazy Republicans are. But you actually had something to do with that because you not only allowed the wolf into the house, you know, figuratively, literally, but also you voted for the wolf, you know, when it was your time, when you really had no case state in the game anymore. You were not even in leadership, you know, and you didn't have to vote for him, and yet you still decided to do that. So
yeah, so those are the types to me that are even more dangerous. You know, that Marjorie is crazy Marjorie, and she's going to be crazy Marjorie. Matt, we know Matt Gaetz is losing all his mind. And I mean, I guess I would be if folks were just accusing me left and right of, you know, well, he brought it on himself because didn't nobody tell him to just be proactive in doing interviews or whatever. But those type, we see them. So it's like, I see you. But it's the John Boehners now of the world that it's like, really? So you all have, or what's the other fella? Glasses.
They all retiring right now, but you know, like what was his name? Ryan, the other one, not Tim Ryan. What's the other one?
Ryan.
Paul Ryan.
Oh, Paul Ryan, like Paul Ryan. Yeah, like those, like you said, their complicity. We see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their complicity. We see it. All right, we had a couple more topics, but since we on this white supremacy thing, we might as well ride this train out. This week, UN Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, you know, made an address to I can't remember what audience. I'm gonna drop the link in there, but basically the right wanted to come for her. And I don't even like the terms, the right and all this stuff. But anyway,
because they always wrong.
That part. But you know, in the news, I think it was someone from Newsmax who was pressuring Jen Psaki about, well, she should be relieved, and what is Joe Biden going to do about her, because she made this statement before an assembly and said that how white supremacy is rooted in our founding documents. And I'll drop the article. Y'all can go and watch the link, because she's obviously did the Sunday morning shows this way. But Linda Thomas Greenfield is the United Nations ambassador. She is a Black woman from Vacherie, Louisiana. And I'm just going to say that right there. And as she said, she went to segregated schools. So, you know, we have this burden of having this honesty about who we are as a nation, while others have this mythology about who we are as a nation. And, you know, you talked about at the top when you're describing yourself as the Black Aristocat, how we have to live in both of these worlds. You know, she's a woman who's had to live in both of this world. And for them to even attempt to come for her for being honest about who we are, because one of the things we always have to do well is be honest about who we are, so we can help transform and move this nation forward. So kudos on you, sister, for saying what needed to be said. Kudos on Jen Psaki for shutting it down in the press room. And you know, and for whatever they want to say about Sleepy Joe, kudos on you for appointing so many diverse cabinet members. So that's my take on that. Y'all want to talk about what Linda said? Because y'all, we listened to what Linda said at the top as we were preparing. What y'all think?
Well, I said, well, let me correct. I said earlier Greenfield, Thomas Greenfield. So sorry that I got the names wrong. Listen, I have more of a challenge with the fact that she actually was trying to do the right thing, I guess, and give props to America for how far we've come and how we've grown, and that, you know, the fact that she's been able to rise from going to segregated schools to being in this a UN ambassador and being in this position. I mean, yes, all of those things are true, but I'm just tired of us having to give props where it's not due at this point. What she said was correct. slavery is our original sin in this country, and it was codified in our documents, in our and even after slavery was abolished, if you will, there's still, remnants of that, those same beliefs in our Constitution. And so I don't understand why then we have to say, but we've come so far. I mean, I don't know. I'm often challenged. Obviously, we are not enslaved in the way that we were before, but obviously we have the prison industrial complex that is a new form of enslavement that is primarily impacting Black Americans. So I don't know why we have to keep, after we criticize America, have to then pat America on the back. No, America has failed a lot of its citizens. And, this idea that we're just supposed to pretend things didn't happen, pretend that we went from slavery all the way to Jim Crow and all, segregate, like we've said, since the Civil Rights Act, it's only been 57 years. So to pretend that we got it right, this is the best nation on earth, you dare not criticize it. I mean, I just have a problem with that belief system. If we didn't criticize it, that would probably mean we didn't care. And yes, we actually care. We actually care, again, that this country lives up to its principles, the things that it said it was going to be, the things that, the quote unquote founding fathers suggested that this country was really going to be. They use the words, and of course, those words were intended to mean one thing at that time. We're just trying to push this country to actually live up to the real definition of those words. Yeah. Equality, justice, liberty for all, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all those words that they came up with. We're just saying, use the fullness of those definitions for everyone.
Yeah.
I just want to add that one of the problems with American idealism is that it's not truthful with itself, right? And so Germany, when they took the step forward in trying to be a better socially conscious nation, is when they accepted their history of Nazi Germany, and to the point where they outlawed symbols of that particular era. But they still teach it. It's very much prevalent. They don't skirt around it. They're very honest about it, and I think it's made it better for them. America's never really had an honest conversation regarding its founding nation. I think that we've talked about it, but they don't acknowledge that it's inherent within the fabric of this country and how we operate. And when we do, people like say, "Well, I'm not racist," and it's like, "Well, nobody said you're racist, but you do benefit from a racist society." Right. So but that's hard for people to construct. But like, how can I benefit from a racist society? I didn't grow up rich. Well, you don't have to grow up rich to develop an idea or to benefit from that supremacy. Just like I'm not a sexist, but I can honestly agree that I have gained from patriarchy, right? And so I don't have to be something to benefit, to gain from it, And so there's an idea that we don't have these honest conversations with ourselves. And I agree with you. I don't like that she tried to walk it back, but she also was trying to keep her job. So, I mean, there's that as well. It's easy to come from this side of the fence where I can say, "Oh, you should have just black powered it up, black fist, don't relent." But I don't have she probably got a call from Biden, to like, "Hey, I need you to clean that up because I'm getting pressure and I can't protect you."
Well, I mean, she got criticism as well because, as Demetria said, she's from Bastrop, Louisiana, and she attended LSU. And she mentioned that her experience at LSU wasn't the best. She had issues of racism. People treated her poorly. And you had all these folks at LSU acting like they don't know. Yeah, how dare you? Because this is the flagship university of the state of Louisiana, and we have never had these. And it's like, you all choose to select certain periods in time. I guess when Shaquille O'Neal was there, and certain periods of time to suggest that racism wasn't woven into the fabric of the founding of that university. I mean, it's like it as what Nisi said, America is redneck.
Right.
And so none of this is a surprise. What's surprising to me is how much mind trickery must you do to continue to perpetuate these lies and like delusions. That's what's a shock. I'm like, wow, well that seems like it should be exhausting, but I guess not.
Right.
Well, it's funny what you say because, and I didn't even bring this up as a topic for tonight, but we could have definitely gone there with Sharon Osbourne appearing on Bill Maher's show. I didn't even watch it because I was like, you know what, Bill, I can't even do it right now. I can't do Sharon right now. I'm not doing it. But just reading some of the commentary about it, we always hear, well, I don't want to be called a racist. I don't want to be associated with that because they have a negative view of certain people. So we've been using that moniker, redneck, what have you. But they have a delusion that it's those people who are beneath them, but they're better than that. So I don't want to be associated with that. Well, I don't want to be 10 pounds overweight, but I am, right? So there are some things that you don't want, but that you are, or that you benefit from. And we have to be honest about it. And I think that is why why people came out against her comments the way they did, is because it's a mirror. And some folks just don't want to look in the mirror. Same thing when you talked about this fear, these irrational fears. The irrational fear about who's going to attack you and who's going to harm you is because you've done so much damage, destruction, and harm. So you don't want to look in the mirror because then you don't like what you see when you look in the mirror. And I just think that at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. That what she said, she held up a mirror. And like me, I held up the mirror. I don't want this, but I still can love and accept myself. And that's what she ultimately was saying. Look, we can still love and accept this who we are, but we got to be honest about it at the same time. Right. So anyway, well, y'all, we have already talked an hour. And we have more topics to get to, but the hour went by really, really fast. We want to thank you all for tuning in tonight to Hey Sister. We thank our special guest. Any words you want to say in closing, Mr. Black Aristocat? So make sure you check out his Uncultured Bias podcast. You can find it at his site, KamaraWilliams.com. You can also read some of his blog posts if you don't already follow him on Facebook. He probably can't have no more Facebook followers because he probably already maxed out at the number there. But you can get some of those good reads on his website. Anything you want to say in closing tonight? I know we've been around the world in our topics, but anything you want to leave the people with?
No, I just want to say thank you for having me on your program. I really did enjoy it. This was fantastic. And, I enjoyed not only the conversation, but the commentary from people, who were giving great statements or questions or whatnot. So this is fantastic. I would love to come back on, if you would have me. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And again, yes, Uncultured Bias podcast. We do have, we are on Spotify and on Apple, so you can find that, or you can just go on my website, KamaraWilliams.com, and check that out as well. So,
right. Well, thank you so much, sister. Anything you want to say in closing tonight?
I'm going to say thank you, Mr. Kamara. This was great. I've enjoyed the commentary. You bring a very fabulous.
Oh, I'm about to say, you about to put Teddy Pendergrass on?
My phone turned on, and it's the first thing.
No worries. No, you bring a great perspective. So definitely look forward to having you on again. Sister, I know we're gonna always shout out, your Spring Into Leadership Conference coming up. So springintoleadership.com. For those, if you haven't already registered, please do so. I keep saying it, just invest in yourself. Why wouldn't you do that? And last but not least, I'm going to shout out, since we dropped it on Monday, ThibodeauxvilleFilm.com. It is a documentary that I am working on the 1887 sugarcane labor strike and what resulted in the Thibodeau massacre. So you can go to our website, www.ThibodeauxvilleFilm.com. That's Thibodeauville with an E. Yes, so paying homage to the original old school name of our city. So, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so as you can see, folks, all of us, we got a lot going on, and so we definitely appreciate your support. We appreciate you tuning in tonight to Hey Sister. We'll definitely be checking out each other's programming and supporting one another, and we thank you for supporting us. So we'll see you back here on next Sunday. Kamara, Christina, y'all hold the line and wave goodbye to the people. Good night, everybody.
Bye.